All right, and it looks like we are live and good to go here. Thanks for joining us. For those who may be tuning in, a little bit of a special showcase that we have going for you here today. So, with the playoff picture coming into the realm in 2 hours and change. So we'll basically know everything that's going on. But we figured with a little deep dive that we had earlier that we'd be able to give you a little bit of a preview of what you could see. So once again, this is not what we want to happen necessarily here in the playoff picture. This is based off the trends from what the playoffs have been that could realistically come into the play or could realistically happen based on previous projections and what we've seen in the last week and a half, almost 2 weeks since the last rankings came out. So, something to keep in mind if you're looking at the rankings on the state's site and you're waiting for the bracket show, there is a mismatch, of course, with the Max Preps rankings on maxpreps.com. Number of factors that go into that is because there's different criteria. And the Max Preps ratings have a wide range of different criteria compared to the FHSAA, which cuts off some of those factors that Max Preps brings into play and only uses some of their specific criteria that they have going forward for that. Having said that, of course, this is not the final answer. Also, if you're looking at the Max Preps rankings, those are only updated Tuesday, so they do not incorporate any numbers, any updates, any metrics as related to games incorporated into the Thursday games. So, differing factors, and that's why there's been a lot of confusion. The FHSA did not put out any rankings at the normal time of the week, which was Tuesday. So that did not happen this week. So the last we have to go off are way back in October from the 29th, those rankings. Having said that, there are some interesting teams, storylines, factors within the rural classification that we're going to focus on. So if you're not in the rural classification, this doesn't really apply to you, or this wouldn't really help you contextualize the projections that we have going forward here in this specific episode here today, just a couple hours before we get rolling. So once again, these are projections. This is the bubble watch. These are teams that we think could be in trouble. And based on the metrics, what we've kind of played out, what we know the state values in their rankings, we've tried to make some predictions going forward. So, fun exercise on the way. Let's get into it here and start at the top as we try to run the show here. So, I know we talked about the bubble teams, but these are the teams we feel really good about. And I think the teams that come in 1 through 9 are safe. So these are not bubble teams, but these are teams we believe almost impossible for them to mix. So we think 1 through 9 that they are good to go. You do see a little shuffle up based on the projections. This is how we feel 1 through 9 are going to end up. Of course, you see Hawthorne and Madison County getting the bump, Union County taking the loss there. So that's why you see a little bit of a switch up there. You see Chiefland and Jay, who finished strong. Obviously, Pahokee taking the L. Osceola going a perfect 10-0, getting a little bump there. Chipley hanging around despite their late loss. So, of course, we're only taking the top 16. So these are 9 of our 16 here in the rural classification. So that's a change that's been happened recently. So there's only 7 more seats at the table. And so that's what's going to get us into some of these bubble teams as we project these out. Top 8 seeds are going to host. So Cottondale would be our last host. So you would match them up just like you would in an NCAA bracket, 1 versus 16, 2, 15, 8, 9, all the way through. So those are pretty safe. I don't think that surprises anybody. Here's where we get into the weeds a little bit, or here's where we get into a little bit of the shenanigans. So, this is a simplified version of what we've put out and generated with the rankings. We don't have a clean, presentable, nice live stream formatted version of our numbers and our metrics, but there are some behind the scenes one. That's why you'll see me looking down here as I'm trying to produce and record at the same time as we have that going on for you here today. So let's get into some of our bubble teams. So coming into this week, based on the metrics, if we saw teams being able to be jumped or to jump teams, We basically put anybody in the 10 to 26 range, so those 16, 17 teams in the bubble watch. So, of course, the 10 are going to be a lot more secure than the 15, 16, right? For example, just like you would in any situation. But these are the teams that are going to be most at risk to either getting jumped and not making the playoffs to potentially what we could see for the FHSA. Once again, these are projections based on what we've seen since the rankings have been coming out. These are unofficial as far as the state's concerned, but we do feel pretty good about them being tracking these since the rankings got started a couple weeks ago. So let's get into the sensitive stuff here. This is the bubble watch. So teams making a jump, Williston really finishing strong. We see them jumping up a couple spots. Here is Bluntstown. They were able to get the big win last night on a Thursday game. They were down to Port St. Joe 9-0, came back. We feel like they did enough to hold at that 11 seat. Fort White taking a jump. Lafayette, because of the other team's movement, though they finished strong, on this specific circumstance, we see them dropping to 13. Holmes County holding the line at 14. That big win against Alabama Opp High School really saved the deal for Holmes County. I think they're just above the line and good to go here. So with these teams that you have, once again, this is not a body of work, which is the biggest kind of fallacy as you take the previous rankings into the final rankings. You're looking for the changes. So what has changed since 10/29 here to 10/8, including the games last night on the 7th? That's what we're looking for. These shifts are what's going to affect it. So if you just pull the strength of schedule, you just pull the record, you just pull a couple other factors that you're looking at to cross compare these teams, that's not an accurate switch up of where the rankings will go. Because think of it as a deposited bank account. You've already got the first 10 weeks deposited in your account. You're just looking for week 11, and you're just looking for bonus week 12 to be factored into these changes. So that's what the focus is. Not the whole season, just since 10/29. Those are the differences that we're looking for. So as we skate down here, Baker is a big jump. They were below the line. We feel solid that Baker, with their strong finish, getting to 7-3, having some big wins, will get them above the line. And Moorhaven was another team that the metrics absolutely loved. Super strong finish from Moorhaven. As you can see, I think they're going to be making a big jump. They're going to be falling into this 15 to 18 range, believe it on the rankings, but it looks like Moorhaven will be doing just enough to get above the line. So these are going to be projected out. We believe, once again, unofficially, that they would be in. On the other side, you have Franklin and Brantford looking like they're going to take a slide here. Unfortunately for them, is what we have rolling out. So continuing on down the line, these would be your other teams. Port St. Joe finishing strong, Wildwood finishing strong. You have Fort Meade dropping off a little bit. The metrics did not like them. Big drop for Fort Meade. Another riser was Dixie County. That's why you see them make a jump. A big drop here for Jeffco down the stretch. And so these are teams on your outside looking in, but have potential to go to the B bracket. So if we were simulating these out, some predictions here of what the bracket would be based on what we saw from those predictions, this would be your projected bracket. Of course, like we said, Hawthorne making the jump because of the Union County loss. And then you have that team sliding in seemingly out of nowhere, the way Moorhaven finished, but cannot emphasize enough the strong finish. And of course, the state of Florida ranks as compared to Max Preps. That's one thing you can split hairs on. Max Preps loves strength of schedule. The Florida rankings love your individual record. And so Moorhaven's ability to get above 500, they will be thoroughly rewarded. Will they get all the way up to 16? I believe so. To be determined. Get at me in a couple hours to let me know how wrong I was. Projecting out, Cottondale, your last host. They would get Chipley. Chiefland will host Lafayette. Jay, of course, you can see Fort White being the host. Of course, there's no district champs here in rural, so it's all raw seeding. It's all wide open. Higher seed will always host. Pahokee Bluntstown, Union County falling into that 3. That's a dangerous matchup with Holmes. Holmes really been coming on strong. Osceola Williston's going to be a really fun 7-10 if that plays out. And then, of course, Madison County hanging tough. They're beating up 6, 5, 7A, 8A teams, it seems like, if there are on the schedule, they'll get the jump up because of the Union County loss. I think those metrics will give them just enough to be slotted into the 2 seed, which would give them home field advantage to the Final Four if that was the case. So looking good here from Madison as the projections go. Once again, unofficial, not necessarily the case for what's going on here, but things to consider based on these rankings where we believe things will go. So, of course, you look at the bubble teams that were on the bubble, Branford and Franklin projections, I don't think are going to be kind to them. For our rankings, we had them dropping from a net ranking, dropping pretty significantly. Or the other teams jumping them pretty significantly. A huge jump from Baker. The metrics really like Baker since the 29th. Also, Moorhaven absolutely doing well. Branford's been solid, but these other two, because of the close margin that we were dealing with, you're going to see a big jump. And I think Branford, unfortunately, is a victim of the process, as is Franklin. So Franklin is another team. Once again, this is not who I wanted to be in. I'd love to see Franklin in these playoffs, but because of the last week and a half, I think Franklin, the metrics playing out, not liking them. You have a net ranking that we've kind of projected dropping of about 5 to 6%, of course, with the loss. And then, of course, the strength of schedule getting impacted as well, which to some doesn't make sense because you add a 10-0 Alcilla, but you looked at the rest of the schedule. A lot of people kind of drop in here in these final weeks or so. So I think it'll be just enough, unfortunately, to drop Franklin County below the line. So these are the projections, of course, based on the metrics. We're valuing what we've seen throughout the year here. So, of course, when we're wrong, inevitably there will be some L's that we will take here, but we want to be able to try to provide something for you here if you're trying to get some guidance on this rural classification, what to expect. Maybe soften the blow or maybe get you a little hyped up here as the teams go forward. Of course, this is unofficial. Here, the FHSAA coming out with their official rankings in just a couple of hours. 6 o'clock Eastern, they've told us, is liftoff. So look forward to that. But projections, possibly, to get you prepared down the stretch. For Andrew Jupe and the I-10 Sports Media Network here on the North Florida Prep Report, your bubble watch for the rural classification. Teams we believe are in, teams we believe are getting dropped here today. Be well. Enjoy the madness in just a couple of hours.